We begin with an evocative flashback, a glimpse of the past that is almost too wonderful to be real. A teenaged Kody Brown, beaming with pride, smiles in the Lehi, Utah house full of the noise and joy of his first 13 kids. The atmosphere is warm and full of promise. His gaze, directed at the camera, blazes with a faith that seems unbreakable as he pronounces, "I'm creating a dynasty for my family. This is all for them." For an instant, we are convinced. It sounds like the promise of something holy, a kingdom constructed upon unity, belief, and love. But that radiant dream is brutally torn apart. The screen jolts forward to the present. Kody, red-faced and furious, his hair wild, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. He's screaming at his grown sons, "You're living in my house. It's my money." The dynasty he once promised has crumbled into ashes, and the evidence suggests something far darker than just a father losing his temper. This isn't merely the story of a family drifting apart. This is the tale of betrayal. A masterminded inheritance heist, a plan so covert, so deliberate, that the majority were oblivious to it as it was unfolding. But we won't be. Because tonight, we're tracing the money, the power, and the manipulation trail to see how Kody and Robyn Brown not only emotionally abandoned their children, but potentially stole their futures away from them financially. Welcome to Sister Wives Crew. If you're tired of the surface-level drama and you're ready to peel back the layers to expose the shocking financial conspiracy that broke this family from the inside out, then you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button, join the crew, and buckle in, because the evidence we're about to walk through is explosive. To really get a sense of what was lost, we must first grasp what was given. Before the shine of TLC, before the mansions of Vegas and the pandemonium of Flagstaff, there was an unspoken pact within the Brown family, what we can refer to as the Brown Family Trust. No, it wasn't a signed document in a courthouse. It was something more profound. It was a religious covenant, the result of mutual sacrifice, religious faith, and the sharing of each and every dollar that was earned for one shared future. Kody's call to battle was straightforward but compelling. One family, one bank account, one future. Back then, it wasn't theory, it was survival. The first wife, Meri Barber, the legally wed Kody in 1990, was the cornerstone. She labored, she supported, she kept the boat afloat while Kody pursued grand ideals of legacy. Her humble income was the initial seed, the spark that made this family experiment take root. Then Janelle, the second wife, and the actual monetary force behind the Browns. Janelle was not merely another wife. She was the breadwinner, the planner, the woman who knew money when no one else did. With her quick wit and tireless work ethic, she created the steady income that fed, clothed, and sheltered the family. Each paycheck she received went directly into the family coffers. No secret savings, no personal accounts, just sacrifice for the so-called dynasty. And Christine came next. The caretaker, the nurturer, the one whose value was not calculated in dollars, but in selfless dedication. She raised not only her 6 children, but mothered the whole flock of 13. Christine was the chef, the instructor, the nurse, the emotional pulse of the home. And while society devalues this work, don't think for a moment. Her labor was equivalent to hundreds of thousands of dollars annually in sweat equity. Without Christine's sacrifices, Janelle would not have been able to work outside the house, and Kody would not have been able to function as visionary. Together, these women established the real foundation for the Brown Family Trust. And then the TLC arrived. In 2010, the Browns' lives were splashed onto millions of TV screens, and the paychecks were humongous compared to anything they had ever known. But here's the catch. The money did not belong to Kody. Yes, his name may have appeared on the contracts, but morally, ethically, spiritually, he was little more than a steward. A CEO of a family business, where the wives owned it as shareholders, and the children, the original 13, were the legitimate heirs. Each episode they endured, every individual struggle televised, every intimate moment auctioned off to the world was constructing that inheritance in real time. The house, the property, the accounts, it was their inheritance. And then, along came she, Robyn Sullivan, a divorced mother of 3, coming in not as a bringer, but as an albatross to be rescued. Rumors circulated of tens of thousands of dollars in debt, catalog cards, store credit, obligations from her previous life. And overnight, the Brown Family Trust took it in. The pot built by Meri's sacrifices, Janelle's paychecks, Christine's caregiving, it was rated to clear Robyn's debts. Before she had put in a single dime, she was already cashing out, and it didn't stop there. Where the other wives practiced financial modesty, Robyn ushered in excess. A lavish wedding dress, a romantic honeymoon, luxuries no other wife was ever afforded. Even on that frantic midnight flight from Utah to Las Vegas, as the original wives and 13 children were stuffed into rentals, Robyn and her kids were housed in a bigger, more spacious house. The warning signs existed. The cracks in the foundation had started. But the ultimate betrayal, the coup de grace to the Brown family trust, was executed by one legal maneuver camouflaged as an act of love. Kody's divorce from Meri so that he could lawfully marry Robyn. In the public eye, it was presented as chivalrous, an altruistic gesture to provide Robyn's children for adoption, to turn them into official Browns. Meri was lauded for her selflessness, but under the glossy facade lay something much darker. A shift of power, assets, and legal rights that would forever tip the scales. By divorcing Meri, Kody took away her 24-year legal status. No more spousal rights, claims on his property, or even next of kin status. Hours later, when he married Robyn, all of those rights belonged to her. Overnight, Robyn and her kids weren't merely members of the family, they were upgraded to first-class heirs. They now had higher stakes in Kody's properties, his future income, even his social security and death benefits. Benefits paid in large part by Meri and Janelle's years of toil. In that instant, the pecking order changed. Robyn's kids, Dayton, Aurora, Brianna, and subsequently Solomon and Ariella, claimed the highest rung on the inheritance ladder, and the original 13 were softly edged out. They were the golden ticket holders. Robyn's children, through the stroke of a single signature and a masterminded divorce, were ensured as the rightful recipients of all Kody possessed and all that he would eventually leave behind. Their financial fate was bound legally to their father's wealth. At the same time, the original 13, the very children whose childhoods and lives had been peddled to TV viewers, whose mothers had established the family fortune with blood, sweat, and tears, were relegated to second class. To the law, the spiritual children of Meri, Janelle, and Christine were devalued, their inheritance now tenuous, their claims resting not on justice but on Kody and Robyn's goodwill. Consider the scale of such a betrayal. He had not merely traded in wives, he had altered the line of descent. The dynasty that had been shared by all the children had been diverted, pipelined straight into Robyn's family line. And the really scary thing was, the OG 13 were made to celebrate it. They clapped, they smiled, they even praised Meri's sacrifice, not realizing they were cheering the very act that cut them out of their own legacy. This was betrayal disguised as love, but the legal maneuver was only the opening act. The real execution of this heist came through something even colder, the liquidation of assets. To follow the money is to follow the truth. And that truth begins in Las Vegas. For a fleeting instant, the Vegas cul-de-sac was the epitome of Brown family success. 4 houses custom built, one beside the other, each wife with her own deed, her own concrete piece of safety. For once, the family had something like true equity. It was security in brick and mortar, and for the kids, it meant that regardless of what storms blew in, their mothers could take something real with them. Christine had her property. Janelle had hers. Even Meri had a house in her name. It was the clearest cut inheritance the family had ever gained. But stability was not Kody's aim. His aim, for that matter, was consolidation, transferring all power, all riches into their possession. Step in the ill-fated move to Flagstaff. A choice confounding fans, perplexing even the family itself. It was marketed as a quest for superior culture, an escape from Vegas sin on the surface. But Janelle, being the CFO of the family, saw right through it. We saw her beg, doing math, cautioning that selling 4 houses in a volatile market while relocating to a pricey town with no vision was fiscal suicide. Her warnings were ignored, ridiculed, labeled as a lack of faith. Why? Since logic never was the reason. The move wasn't one of religion, it was one of liquidation. To uproot the family, the Vegas homes had to be sold. And with each sale, the OG wives' equity, their one true piece of financial independence, was drained back into the family pot. Christine's nest egg, gone. Janelle's years of sacrifice, gone. Meri's only major asset, gone. All of it sucked into a vortex. And that vortex had a name, Coyote Pass. On paper, Coyote Pass looked like the dream. Hundreds of acres of beautiful land, marketed as the future home of an impressive family compound. The promised land, Kody referred to it. But in actuality, it was a cash trap, a tomb for the OG kids' inheritance. The Browns paid a whopping $820,000 for raw land. Land without water, without sewer, without electricity, without infrastructure. The experts were shocked at the cost, and the unseen expenses hung in the hundreds of thousands just to get it habitable. Issues began almost instantaneously. Possible cistern problems, zoning challenges, rumors that the property was not even development friendly. And on film, we saw Kody himself confess that they would have to sell since they could not afford to build it. So why did they purchase it in the first place? Since the intention wasn't to construct, the intention was to bury riches. By making liquid, ready assets, the houses, into an illiquid, inaccessible, messy clod of earth, Kody guaranteed that no wife could simply take her portion. Ownership was broken, documents matted, and at the center of it all, the most desirable plots conveniently attached to Kody and Robyn. The OG wives were rendered helpless. Their riches lay buried under Arizona ground. Janelle, who had once had her own house in Freehold, was down to living in an RV on that desert land. Christine, bitter and disillusioned, was trapped in a rental, her equity devoured by a house she hated. The estate of the OG kids had been buried, literally, under Coyote Pass. And yet, whereas the OG wives were divested of stability, Kody and Robyn thrived. From the ashes of financial devastation, their palace, a 4,400 square foot sprawling home in one of Flagstaff's highest-end neighborhoods, bought for $890,000. While the others struggled in limbo, Kody and Robyn found permanence. Their children were assured not only stability, but luxury. 4-car garage, private forest frontage lot, big bedrooms. Each child their own room, their own comfort. This was not a house. It was a palace, a throne, an emblem of the new royalty. And don't think for a second, the funds for it came out of the same fund that originally contained the OG wives' equity. The path is plain. The Vegas houses sold, the money funneled through Coyote Pass, then drained into the palace of Kody and Robyn. And here is the most cruel fact. While Coyote Pass remains undeveloped, a deadweight holding down the futures of the OG-13, the Flagstaff mansion increases in value. It accumulates wealth, equity, inheritance, solely for Robyn's children. Dayton, Aurora, Brianna, Solomon, and Ariella will benefit. The OG-13 will not. This mansion is not just property. It is the tangible symbol of betrayal, a palace constructed on the ruins of sacrifice. And if you want the proof, you don't need spreadsheets or deeds. All you have to do is look. Look at the lives of the two sets of children. On one side, Robyn's kids living in comfort, showered with gifts, receiving clatter rings and jewelry from their father. On the other side, the OG-13, sharing bedrooms, hand-me-down clothes, and parents stretched thin. The divide is visible, the injustice undeniable. And here's where the divide becomes irrefutable. On one hand, there is this new royal family flourishing. The latest technology, opulent birthdays, edited holidays, each smile and surprise painstakingly captured for the cameras. But the most valuable currency they get isn't cash, it's time. Kody's time. He's a constant daily figure in Robyn's house, the full-time father he always said he wanted to be. Every school function, every milestone, every little thing, he's there. Why now? Because the economic independence bought with the collective family funds enables him to invest all money, attention, affection into one main domicile. No more managing 4 houses. Just one priority, one focus, one family. Then we look over the tracks, and the contrast chills your stomach. It isn't only unfair, it's cruel. Take Isabel. Christine's daughter fought for years with scoliosis, suffering, and it altering her life until extensive surgery became inevitable. Tens of thousands of dollars. A life-altering procedure. And what did a reality TV family, swimming in TLC checks and years' worth of accumulated resources, do in the face of this crisis? They created a GoFundMe. Let that register. The daughter whose childhood was commodified then had to appeal to strangers on the internet for money to pay for her medical treatment. The public embarrassment is astounding. What does that reflect about the priorities within this supposed dynasty? Where was the money? Tied up in an untapped site of Coyote Pass, and in a Flagstaff house constructed for other people's children. And take a look at Garrison, Janelle's son. We saw him work, multiple jobs, long hours, saving up for a down payment on a house of his own. He's attempting to establish the safety net his father quietly dismantled. Did Kody intervene to assist? Extend a hand from the same pot Janelle bankrolled for decades? No. What we received instead was the now famous tantrum. Kody complaining that his adult sons were freeloaders, yelling at them to pay him rent. Picture it. The father ensconced in a near-million-dollar compound, demanding his son, struggling to make it on his own, pay him rent. It's not hypocrisy alone. It's the ultimate metaphor for the whole exercise. We witness the cycle again. Gabe striving to fund his own car, his own existence. We listen as Mykelti describes how she and Tony had to take out a loan from his parents to purchase their first house. A subtle affirmation that the family bank, the one pot for all one touted, is shut to the OG children. Call it what it is. Not merely favoritism, but a documented system of financial segregation. A zero-sum game in which each designer indulgence for Aurora or new gadget for Solomon is $1 that didn't go toward Isabel's surgery or Garrison's down payment. One side indulgence, the other side neglect, both paid for out of the same initial pot. And just when you believe the funneling couldn't get any more deliberate, there's one final, quietly masterful move. A bit of documentation that hardly made a wave with the public, but slammed the vault door on everybody else's future. Dabsark Entertainment, LLC. The title is a mission statement. DABSARK. Dayton, Aurora, Brianna, Solomon, Ariella, Robyn, Kody. Repeat it to yourself. Check who's not there. No Meri, no Janelle, no Christine. None of the original 13. Logan, Aspen, Leon, Madison, Mike Helty, Hunter, Peden, Garrison, Gabriel, Gwendolyn, Isabel. Truly, the same people whose lives constructed the brand don't appear in the roll call. In print, it's merely an LLC. In reality, in the sharpest family analysts' and most sensible interpretation of events opinion, it's the corporate shell that snags the cash. Here's how it works. The theory. Future contracts, appearances, and production income no longer flow through the family. They flow through Dobsark. And who owns Dobsark? The insider elite. The funds that at one time, at least ethically, were owed to the group now come into a corporate account sealed off from the OG wives and kids. If that's the way it was set up, the ramifications are disastrous. Janelle and Christine, once integral shareholders in the family business, are recharacterized as talent, independent contractors, hired at the whim of the owners of the company. Kody and Robyn, the women who work to create the content, become gig workers in a reality show about their own lives. The Vegas, equity, the history, stolen and hidden at Coyote. Pass. The TLC revenues, the future, diverted into a private corporate drain. Assets of the past lost. Income of the future seized. The robbery completed. And so, what we had mistaken for ordinary family blowouts, particularly between Kody and his older sons, was actually something much more sinister. Not arguments, depositions, not disobedience, objections. Watch again through the eyes of understanding and you see it. Dispossessed heirs, in the aftermath of a promised kingdom, demanding explanation from the man who changed the locks. The tinderbox? Kody's doctrinaire selectively enforced COVID regulations. He insisted Gabe break up with his wife. He insisted Garrison lose his job, abandon the very path to his self-sufficiency to safeguard the family. But who was family by that point? The rules had only one definite beneficiary in mind: unfettered access to the new palace for Kody, Robyn, and Robyn's children. Loyalty trials masquerading as security measures meant to regulate movement, finances, and proximity to the throne. When the boys pushed back, they weren't simply being defiant. They were rebelling against a new legal and financial order that had already written them out. Their anger wasn't teenage angst. It was the fury of the disinherited. And when Garrison finally saved enough to buy his own home without a penny from his father, it wasn't just a move out. It was a declaration of independence. "We've been forgotten," he said. Not just emotionally, financially, strategically, systemically. Here's the bald truth the video can't obscure. Kody invested time, resources, and attention where it would accrue, under the roof that one day would belong to Robyn's kids. And the OG 13 were asked to make sacrifices, to buckle down, to settle for less, and pay rent on an inheritance that was theirs. This is not a misstep. This is a plan. When Garrison or Gabriel stood eyeball to eyeball with their dad, they were not only frustrated boys. Their language was that of plaintiffs, arguing their case in the court of family opinion. And Kody's rebuttals? Those were the most damning evidence of all. His anger wasn't the righteous indignation of a father grasping for ways to lead his children. No, his anger was the brittle fury of a king whose rule had been tested. And then came the slip, the outburst that tore away the last shred of the illusion. "You're living in my house. It's my money," he screamed. One sentence, one unguarded moment, and the carefully spun myth of our family, our money, disintegrated. The Brown family trust was a lie. There was no collective pot. There was no dynasty for all. There was only his wealth. Wealth to be spent at his discretion, transferred into Robyn's home, saved for Robyn's children. The OG children, in Kody's mind, they were no longer heirs. They were drains, ghosts of past responsibilities he wished would disappear. And nowhere was that more obvious than in the tragic admission of Gabriel. Through tears, he recounted the moment his father forgot his birthday, calling not to celebrate his life, but to question him about COVID exposure. It wasn't just neglect. It was erasure. In Kody's new reality, Gabe wasn't a son to honor. He was a sunk cost. Why remember the birthday of someone written out of the new corporation? Why spend time on an heir of a branch of the family that ceased to be? The brawls, the sobs, the furious rants. Audiences saw family drama. But beneath it, it was the rustling of dispossessed heirs awakened to reality. The kingdom they had been promised had been plundered. The vault was not just empty. The keys had been passed on to another family, and then the verdict was delivered, not by the children, but by the matriarchs, the original board of directors, the women who had constructed the Brown family trust on sweat and sacrifice. They rendered their verdict one by one. The trust was tainted, the CEO deceitful, the whole operation morally bankrupt. Christine was the first to strike. Once the most ardent believer in plural marriage, her disillusionment was the greatest. Years of seeing money from her own living room disappear down Coyote Pass, of seeing her daughter Isabel shamed by crowdfunding her surgery while her father enjoyed luxury, toughened her resolve. Packing up Kody's stuff wasn't symbolic. It was foreclosure on an abusive partnership. And when she sold her house in Flagstaff and reinvested in a duplex in Utah, she clawed back some of her children's inheritance. That duplex was not just a house, it was an egg, a realizable inheritance for her children that Kody and Robyn would never be able to lay hands on. And then Janelle, the rock of the family finances, the practical one, the woman who had thought she could salvage the dream. She was put in her place, even living in an RV on the desolate dust of Coyote Pass, hoping to make the investment worthwhile. But finally, she read the figures for what they were, an illusion meant to strip her and her children of safety. Her exit was the last audit, the confirmation that the trust was smoke and mirrors. By separating her money, establishing her independence, and refusing to hemorrhage any longer for Kody's fantasy, she pulled her 6 children back from the brink of destruction. Her dignified silence was her verdict. This kingdom is broke, and I will not mortgage my children to keep it running. And lastly, Meri, the first wife, the original partner, the one who had borne more shame and neglect than anyone. For 20 years, she had held on to the hope that loyalty would be repaid, that determination would count. But even she finally realized the truth. By severing ties, by safeguarding her own wealth, her profitable business ventures, her Utah inn, she made it sure her legacy would never be anyone else's. Her leaving was the final nail in the coffin of Kody's empire. If even Meri could leave, then there was nothing left to salvage. Together, these women orchestrated not a retreat, but a rescue. They salvaged what they could. They clawed back their futures. They protected their children from the financial quicksand of Coyote Pass. They established that the true dynasty wasn't the one Kody constructed, but the one they rescued from the ashes. And what about Kody and Robyn? What is the ultimate verdict on them? Yes, they are the victors. They are sitting in their $1 million house, grasping onto money-draining land like sand through fingers, holding court over an LLC whose name only includes half of their children. They won on paper, but what did they really receive? They are masters of an empty kingdom, a dynasty founded not in love but in treachery. They might possess the deeds, the books, the paper, but in the court of public opinion, they are stigmatized for good. Their wealth is haunted by the 13 children they cut off, by the wives who departed, by the legacy they brought low with their own hands. Yes, they gained the war for the family inheritance, but in gaining it, they lost the family. And that loss, the loss of love, loyalty, trust, makes their victory a gilded cage, a Pyrrhic victory, an Ash dynasty.